Hi and welcome back to the channel. My name is Kyle and I hope you guys are having a great day. Really what the purpose of this video is to kind of sit down and give you a little bit of an update on my truck and to tell you a little bit about our honeymoon that my wife and I just went on. So to start things off, let's talk about the truck real quick. So to kind of recap, I have a 2021 Ford F150. It is an XLT 302A high package with the 5-liter. One of the questions that I got asked with that truck from a previous video was, why did I go with the 5-liter over the 2.7? And really, it's kind of an easy question to answer. There's really two main reasons. For one, I wanted more towing capacity than what I had with my 2.7. So I had a 2018 F-150 2.7 liter, and that one had a towing capacity of right around 7,600 pounds, and I wanted something a little bit more when I got a new truck. So I drive a lot for work. On average, I put about 40,000 miles a year on. I had that truck for quite a few years. I shouldn't say quite a few, it was like 3 years that I had it. And, it was getting time to start trading it off and get something different, so I still had some decent value in. And when I went to go look for a new truck, they had a 2.7 and a 5-liter on the lot. Well, the 5-liter has better towing capability. It does have a little bit more power just in general. And, it had the extended fuel tank and everything else that I was looking for. So the 5-liter... This one has the 3.31 rear end, so it's 9,400 pounds worth of towing. And I also got increased payload as well, which is always a positive thing. I know with my old truck, it was right around 1,600 pounds. And not that we were coming close to that when we were towing the camper, but we had a little bit of buffer. But if we ever got a larger camper, it would quickly run out of both payload and towing capacity. And with my new 5-liter, this one has about 1,900 pounds worth of payload. So it was, it fit what I was looking for during that time frame. So with that being said, why don't we go ahead and do a little bit of a quick review on the truck as far as where it's at and the things that has gone wrong with it. I've had the truck now for 5 months and I've put 21,000 miles on it, and for the most part it's been pretty much trouble-free. I had really two issues with it. The first one being that it would, when I would come up to a stoplight or a stop sign and the auto start stop system would engage, it would actually just blip the hazard lights just real quickly, just a quick little blip for like half a second. And I knew it was going to be software driven, that eventually that would go away, because the turn signals worked just fine. The auto start stop system was working just fine. It's just that it was a little glitch that it would do it every time they would turn off, because it would do it both for the auto start stop system, and not every time, but once in a while, even when I would go to turn the truck off, I'd get to my house or get to my destination, I'd shut off the truck, it would do that too. So I knew it was just a matter of time for that to be corrected on its own. And it did that for about a month and a half, and then it stopped. So they must have pushed out an over-the-air update, and that has since gone away. The second thing is that I actually had to take the truck into a dealer for this one. Whenever I would hook up the camper, which is what I'm sitting in right now, or hook up a trailer, if I were to lock the truck within, I don't know, maybe 30 seconds to a minute, the alarm would go off. And basically what was happening is the truck would sense that there was a trailer on the vehicle, and the motion sensors were ultra sensitive. So any movement in with the truck thought that someone was trying to steal your trailer, even though it was maybe just a wind gust or whatever. So it would do that. So I took it into the dealership, and they went through and did a reflash on one of the PCMs, or the modules. I don't know what PCM it really was, but they did a reflash, and it's not perfect by any means, but it's a lot better. Now it's, if I have the trailer, the camper in particular, hooked to the truck, the only time the alarm will go off is if I have, if I'm jacking up if I'm jacking down the tongue jack and the back of the truck is raising up to put on the load bars for my weight distribution hitch, it will set off the alarm every once in a while. Not every time, but it still does it a little bit, but it is significantly better than what it was. So I took it into the dealership, they fixed that, but other than that, it's been good. It has been good. I haven't really done any modifications to the truck other than something that's super basic. I put a different muffler on it. I put a Flowmaster 70 series so I could make that 5 liter a little bit louder so you could actually hear it. And let's see, what else did I do? I put in a K&N drop-in air filter. I know that doesn't add anything for power, so don't breathe down my neck on that. But really, it's easier to clean that off and re-oil it and put it back in every 20,000 miles versus having to go out and buy a new one and everything else. So to me, I've ran those filters for as long as I can remember, just because I put a lot of miles on and it ends up being a little bit less expensive in the long run. So I do that. The other thing that I did was I put a catch can on it as well, and I've had that on from pretty much day one. And on average, I change my oil every 7,000 to 8,000 miles, well before, the oil light thing comes on saying that you need to change your oil. And I would say on average, I get, maybe 1 or 2 ounces worth of oil residue in the catch can. So it's really not much, but I do check it every 1,000, 2,000 miles and empty it off and stuff, but it's always just a little bit, in the actual catch can itself, so it's not a whole lot. But other than that, the truck is stock, so it ships well, it drives well, it's a smooth running vehicle, so I've never really had any other issues with it. And we definitely put it through a lot of paces with our honeymoon, which is going to be the bulk of what this video is going to be about. So my wife and I, we got married in August of this year, of 21 here. And for our honeymoon, we went on a 2-week-long trip with the truck and the camper out west. So we live in Wisconsin. After we got married, immediately following our ceremony and our wedding day, we hopped in the truck with the camper and headed west. And our first stop was actually Custer State Park in South Dakota. And if you've never been out there, it's absolutely gorgeous. Get in and stay at the campsite, actually at Custer State Park. It's very inexpensive. It's like $30 a night, and then you have to pay, I think it's like a $7 or $8 non-resident fee or whatever for the stay. So we were there for 3 nights. So it was about $100. Like, it was pretty cheap, so it's $33 a night. It's a great park. There's a lot to do there. You can drive the Scenic Highway, Needles Highway, Crazy Horse, Mount Rushmore, Badlands, Wind Cave. There's a lot of stuff that's right there, and that's what we did for 3 days. So we went there and we did that, and when we stopped in Waldrug on our way out. That was kind of let's take a break, let's get some lunch and recoup a little bit, and hit the road again, because from Wall to Custer, it's about 2 hours. And when we pulled into Waldrug, it was 110 degrees, so it was very hot. In Wisconsin here, we have huge temperature swings from winter to summer, but we never really get above 100 degrees. It's also very humid in Wisconsin. Out in South Dakota, it's a very dry heat. It's a lot like a desert. So it did feel hot, but 110 is hot regardless, and you really noticed it when you were walking over like a parking lot or whatever. It would just be baking you from the inside out. So So when we stopped there for lunch in Wall, we got back into the truck and we noticed that there was one thing that happened at some point in time, from the time that we stopped to the time that we got back into the truck, is that every time we get into the truck, I always do a test of the brakes and the lights on the trailer. So make sure turn signals are working, we have marker lights, just make sure all that stuff is working. And then I always do a little tug test. So, put it in drive forward a little bit and squeeze the brake controller, and obviously it should stop. Well, when I did that, it didn't stop. So we had no trailer brakes. So, instead of sitting there working on it in 110 degree weather, I said, why don't we just, let's make it to Custer and, we'll figure it out at the campsite and see what the hell's going on. So, we got into the truck, we started driving, and then I ended up getting this weird gut feeling that shouldn't really be doing this. So I decided, well, let's pull off and we'll take a look at it. So we pulled off the side of the road and, we looked at all the fuses, I looked at all the wires, didn't see anything that was obviously wrong. Ended up, putting some dielectric grease on the connector, popped it back in, and we had brakes again. So the pigtail must have a connection on that when it plugs into the truck. So I said, okay, we'll fix that later on. So, we make it to our site and everything else, and it was fine, the rest of the way. But, the truck performed well and the camper performed well, and we didn't have any other issues. I mean, no weird tire wears or anything like that. I do have a tire pressure monitoring system that I bought for the trip in particular, and that worked pretty well. It's Tire Minder is what the brand name is, and there's one sensor. It's in the rear passenger tire on the camper. It just loses signal every once in a while, and then it also just catches it right back again. So I don't know. We put different batteries in it, and that didn't really seem to help it any. So I don't think it's a battery issue. I don't know. Maybe it's just a defective sensor, but it works 95% of the time. So I just, it is what it is. But no, everything worked the way that it should. The camper, it cooled, even at 110 degree weather, it cooled the inside of the camper down pretty quickly and didn't really have any issues. Really, the only thing that was kind of strange was we found a screw laying on the ground on the floor of the camper, and we couldn't figure out what it was from. It's just one random screw. It didn't look like any other screws that were around here, so have no idea what that was. Well, eventually we found out what it was, but at that point in time we had no idea. So from there we actually went up to Glacier National Park, and that was the point where we were really starting to get up into some higher elevation, and I was really curious to see how the truck was going to react to that. Having a naturally aspirated V8, they don't do well at high altitude. Obviously the EcoBoost with having twin turbos performs much better, but I was impressed with the 5-liter. I mean, honestly, we were going up probably 5 or 6% grades that were several miles long, and we were easily able to maintain 65, 70 miles an hour, and I still had throttle left. So, with having a 10 speed and having, always being in that power range, I didn't have any issue with it whatsoever. And the camper that we have is it's a 2019 Jayco 212 QB. So it's 26 feet from the bumper all the way to the tongue of the hitch, and comes in at about 5,100 pounds. And we had a little bit of water in the fresh tank in case we need to use the restroom or whatever, but it was like maybe 10 gallons, so it wasn't like we were traveling with a full tank of water by any means. But it handled it well, and really I didn't have any issues. Nothing felt uneasy. I always felt like I had enough power. I wasn't going to be a danger to anyone else on the road, so it worked out really well. The one thing that I will say is, if you're traveling out that direction, we opted to go kind of northwest from Wyoming, Billings, Montana area, and we went kind of on a diagonal up to Glacier. And if you go that route, stop at every gas station. at least in our experience, the route that we took, each gas station was about 120 to 150 miles apart from one another. So anytime that we saw that we needed fuel, we would stop and get it. Even though the truck has a 36-gallon tank and I had an extra 7.5 gallons in fuel can in the bed of the truck, I still wanted to make sure that we weren't going to run out. And, you know, we could have gone probably further, but why chance it? You know, if you're there and you have half a tank left or close to, fill it up. I mean, because you don't really know when the next one's going to be coming. And out there, the cell reception was not the greatest. It was very spotty. You know, for my work phone, I have Verizon, and for my personal phone, I have US Cellular, which is pretty big in Wisconsin. And there were areas where we just didn't have any signal on both phones. So it wasn't just like, hey, the regional carrier doesn't have any. No, it's the national carrier doesn't have any coverage there either. So I don't know what people there do for, you know, for cell phones and things like that, but that's not what this is about. So yeah, so from there, we went down to Yellowstone and Grand Teton. We stayed there for about a week. And again, kind of really going up in elevation from that point. You know, Glacier is about, I don't know, maybe 5,500 feet above sea level. And Yellowstone and Grand Teton is about 6,000 feet. But you go over a couple of passes that are 8, 9, you know, 1,000 feet above sea level. And yeah, on the way home, actually, we passed one that was just over 10,000 feet above sea level. And even at that real high elevation, you know, the truck performed excellent. And, you know, the camper didn't have any issues. It towed great. You know, even after everything was all said and done, everything was the way that it should be. So yeah, so I was really happy about that. And I'll give you a few stats here, so hopefully this doesn't turn off. But so as far as the statistics of what our trip was, our total miles was 4,660 miles from the time that we left our house, went to Custer, to wow, had a brain fog there for a minute. Glacier, and then down to Yellowstone and Grand Teton, and obviously back home. Yeah, about, you know, 4,660 miles. We use a total of 431.27 gallons of fuel, which comes out to a cost of $1,454.15. Our average miles per gallon over the entire trip was 10.8, and our average cost of fuel was $3.37 per gallon. And I will say I was a little surprised when the fuel pricing was about the same as what Wisconsin was at that time, right around $3 a gallon, all the way through South Dakota. The second we went over into Wyoming and Montana, it jumped up like 50-70 cents a gallon. And then obviously in the real tourist areas, it got even worse. You know, we stayed at, when we were down by Yellowstone, we stayed at Flag Ranch, and they have fuel on site. And, you know, not that we necessarily needed to get fuel, but I wanted to get a little bit of fuel in the tank. And because we had about a quarter tank left, and we were still going to go out and do some sightseeing and things. But it was $4.50 a gallon. Like, it was crazy expensive for fuel out there. But, you know, I mean, you obviously, if you're on vacation and you're going to tourist spots, they're going to get you one way or the other. The thing is, out in that area, there was, in 3 hours of driving, we came across three different gas stations. Yellowstone Park itself has 2, and at least 2 that we saw. There might be another one somewhere, but I think they only have 2. And then obviously the one at Flag Ranch. And part of it was my mistake. I never looked to see what the fuel pricing was in the park. I just automatically assumed that it was going to be expensive. It was, but it wasn't quite as expensive as what it was down at Flag Ranch. I think in the park it was right around $4 a gallon, and at, you know, Flag Ranch it was $4.50. So So just be prepared for that. As far as the places that we actually stayed and how much that stuff cost, like I said, we stayed at Custer State Park. That was about $33 a night. From there, we went up into Montana over at Glacier, Moose Creek. As you can see on my fridge, we get a lot of stickers and we make them into magnets. And we always try to get a magnet for the places that we stay at or visit. So yeah, Moose Creek, I think if I remember right, they were right around $40 a night, so it was very reasonable. There was not full hookups, but it was water and power hookup at that campsite. And then over in Yellowstone and Grand Teton, that was obviously Flag Ranch, and that one was expensive. That was about $80 a night. So we were there for 5 nights, so that was $400. That one did have full hookups, which is obviously a plus, but even still, it was pretty pricey, especially given what it kind of was. So like Custer was great. Obviously, it was a normal state park. It was very private. You felt like you were in nature. Moose Creek was a little bit closer together, but there were still some trees, and it was fairly private-ish, but we didn't really care because we weren't going to be at the campsite all that much. And for how much it was fine. For $40 a night, it was no big deal. But Flag Ranch, I was kind of a little bit surprised because there's a lot of really good reviews. And honestly, I don't think it was that great. Like, it was okay, but you're not at your campsite. If you're traveling to visit Yellowstone and Grand Teton, and those are what you're going to be doing for a week, like what we did, like Yellowstone is a huge park. Like we spent 2 full days from 6 in the morning till 7, 8 o'clock at night in the park. And we still didn't cover everything. We didn't do a lot of the hikes. We did some hikes, but a lot of them that we didn't do. It's a massive park. And Grand Teton is a very small park, but still that's a full day. It's a full day to do a couple of the hikes and see the sights and that kind of thing. And then we wanted to go down into Jackson and see some of that stuff, so we spent a day there. So we weren't really at our campsite all that much, and realistically, for the $80, if I went there for vacation, I'd be somewhat disappointed. There was not a lot of privacy at all. There was zero privacy. There was really no trees or anything. It was a lot like a parking lot. The positive side, it was full hookup site, but there was nothing blocking you from you and your neighbor. So, that part of it, it wasn't just our site, it was all of the sites were like that. There may be a couple of hidden gems in there, but they assign the site for you based off of the length of your rig and everything else. So it's not like you can, pick, hey, I want site 15, for example. That doesn't exist with them. So I was a little disappointed on that side. Not that it really mattered, because we needed to have a spot to lay our head down, and we wanted to have full hookups so we could take showers and everything else. But yeah, it was basically a dirt parking lot. There was no grass, and obviously if it would rain or something like that, it would be very muddy. So just be prepared for that. It's a good place to stay. I felt safe and everything else. I didn't feel like someone's gonna come and try to rob us or anything like that, of course, but just be mentally prepared that it's going to be $80, and it's not a lot to say the least. So yeah. Other than that, on the way home, we did run into some weather in Nebraska. So my wife and I were Harvest Host members, and we stayed at a vineyard one night on the way back. And when we got there, it was calm. It was a nice warm day. Nothing really going on. There was no rain in the forecast, no nothing. Well, we went to bed early that night, and we left all the windows open. And we woke up at 12:30, 1 o'clock to a pretty intense thunderstorm, and it had some pretty strong winds, enough to really start, it was rocking the camper kind of side to side. And I woke my wife up, and I said, like, hey, we should move the camper so we're nosed in the wind, because the wind was hitting us broadside. So we got up, and I moved the truck and the camper around, and we were good for about 20 minutes to a half hour, and then the wind shifted directions again, or it was swirling a little bit or something, and at that point the wind gusts really started to increase. And we get wind here in Wisconsin, but out in Nebraska there's nothing stopping it, so it just gets stronger and stronger and stronger. And these were probably 50 to 60 mile an hour winds, and it was sitting at broadside, and you could feel the camper. It was shifting. I know, honestly, it was a little bit scary for a little bit there. So much to the fact you ended up calling the Harvest Host members, the vineyard, and asked them if we could move and get closer to some kind of a shelter. And they said yes, of course, so they're very accommodating. So we moved down, and, they told us where we could go. So we went down, and we got real close to a building, and we were pretty much 95 or 100% out of the wind. So we settled down, we parked, and we went to bed, and everything was fine for about 10 minutes. And after that, the vineyard called us once we moved, and they asked if we had moved, and we said yeah, we did. We told them where we were, and they said, okay, well, just so you know, the weather alert just came over the radio, and they said there's going to be 60 to 70 mile an hour winds, and where we were parked, we're up on top of a hill, so there was no trees or nothing. It's Nebraska, and it's very flat, so there was nothing blocking us, and they said we really didn't want you up on the hill at that point. And they actually unlocked one of the rooms for us to get in if the wind picked up even more and we needed to seek shelter. They were kind enough to allow us to do that. We didn't need to do that. Once we hung up the phone, we fell asleep, and woke up at 4 o'clock, 4:30 in the morning, and hit the road, and we left. But from there was totally fine. So my biggest bit of advice is, if you end up taking on a huge trip like what we did, for one, make sure your tow vehicle's up to the task, because you never know what you're going to run into. We weren't planning on running into, even in the forecast leading up to it, right before we left, we checked everything. It was not supposed to be 110. It was supposed to be like 85, which would have been absolutely gorgeous out there. You never know what kind of weather you're going to run into. You can get into extreme heat. And likewise, when we were out in Yellowstone, it got down to 32 degrees at night. So it got cold. So be prepared for that. I went through and I checked all the wheel bearings and everything. I do that every year, but I did another double check before we left. Actually welded up some little plates on the suspension hangers. So I welded, that closed, and just did a good once over check, and just be prepared to find little things as you're traveling, like the little screw that we found on the floor. Ended up finding out it was actually part of our TV, and it was actually on the mount on the back of the TV, because another screw came out when we were traveling. So luckily we stopped and we saw that, and we tightened up the screws, because 2 were out, and the other 2 that were holding the other part of the mount in were backing out. So we could have come in and had the TV be laying on the floor. It's just, you never know what could happen. And the other thing is, don't be in a hurry. Don't be in a hurry. One thing that I wish that we would have done is we would have either lengthened our trip. So instead of it being 2 weeks, maybe we would have done like 2.5 or 3 weeks, and stayed a little bit more time in each spot. Or just did take on so much and just would have left it at 2 weeks, and maybe we stopped at the Badlands, and then we went to Yellowstone, and then came home instead of driving up to Montana, and up to Glacier. So, don't be in a rush. It's a vacation. I know you can get very stressed out very easily when things don't go right, but just slow down, take a breath. Everything will work out. you know, you've made through life this far. You'll make through this, whatever gets thrown at you. But you know, just enjoy the journey and relax and go through it in that sense. So with that being said, you know, this video is getting to be about a half hour long. I know there's a lot of detail in there, but you know, I told you guys I'd kind of give you an update as far as what the honeymoon was going to be like, and you know, I threw in the truck stuff in there too, because a lot of the people that watch this channel, they have campers and the trucks. They want to know how they all work together and everything else. So I wanted to give you an update on that and how it performed at higher elevation. But if there's any questions that you guys have in particular, by all means, please put it down in the comments. I'd be more than happy to answer that for you. I do this kind of on the side, just whenever I have time. I'm very busy with work, so you know, it may take me a week or two to respond or to upload another video, but I'm slowly getting better. I have a GoPro now, so I'm using my phone. So you know, I'm just very much starting off in this video world, so to say, in YouTube, and you know, we'll kind of go from there. But if you have any questions, please by all means put it down in the comment. I'd appreciate if you could actually leave a comment and like the video. That helps get it in front of other people, so if they have questions and things like that, hopefully I can answer some of those things for you guys. But in the meantime, hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and by all means, like I said, reach out if you guys have any questions. All right, have a good one. Thanks.